Hello everyone, and welcome to my top 10 tips for new players to Enshrouded. I'm your host, Colors Fade. Enshrouded is an adventure and crafting game from Keen Games that just came out a little while ago. I like to think of it as Minecraft, but with far better graphics. Some folks are also calling it a survival game, but that's not really accurate because none of the classic survival mechanics exist, like food, hydration, diseases, and sleep. Food does exist in the game, as do beds, and they do provide specific benefits. However, they're not required, which makes it questionable as to whether you can classify the game as a survival title. What Enshrouded really is, to my way of thinking, is a very fun adventure game with a heavy focus on exploration, combat, crafting, and building. And it does all of these things really well. I've spent 90 hours in the game so far and I'm still having a blast. Currently, it's in early access, but it is incredibly polished in this state, and there is a lot more content than one would expect. I'm getting ready to start a new playthrough, and I thought I'd take a minute to give you my top 10 tips to help out new player. Tip number 1, use map markers to remember important locations and have a system for understanding your map markers. Enshrouded smartly allows players to annotate the map with their own map markers. However, the number of icons and colors is somewhat limited at this stage of the game, and there is no way to label them with text. Without a system in place, it can be hard to remember what a particular map marker means. For now, I recommend having a system in place so you can quickly make sense of the map markers you leave behind. For example, I use a green bag to denote anywhere that has a water well. Water is a resource that is hard to come by in Enshrouded. There are no lakes or rivers in the game, and there are story reasons for this, for any players who are willing to read every note in the game and learn what that reason is. The only place to get water is at a water well, where the player can only draw 5 bags of water at a time. Water is necessary for crafting potions, and it's used in other recipes as well. So I recommend that anytime you find a well, you mark it on your map. If you always use the same icon and color, it will be easy to find all your water sources. This will allow you to run around the map and gobble up all the water in one go, and then later on, when those water wells refresh, you can do it again. In addition to water wells, I also recommend annotating golden chests, as these become prime candidates for farming loot. After looting a chest of its content, the player can log out, then log back in and loot the container again for new loot. This is a great way to build up a supply of runes, which is necessary for upgrading weapons, because any weapon that you loot from a container can be turned into runes if you don't actually want to use it. Finally, consider annotating any building with a high comfort level. The higher the comfort level, the longer a player will maintain their well-rested state, which affords a boost to stamina. Stamina is an important attribute for all players, but especially so for anyone who wants to use a melee weapon, and it's useful for gliding. If you find an existing building that has a high comfort level, you can place a flame altar nearby and then expand the flame altar to encompass that building. This will allow you to repair the building and add to it. There are many items in the game that you can craft that add to the comfort level of your building. This is a quick way to build up your main home player base with a really high comfort level, which will allow you to spend more time out in the world adventuring before you have to come back and rest. Tip number 2, manually set your item deletion protection. Storage space is at a premium in Enshrouded, so you're going to want to delete certain items as you progress. However, you don't want to be prompted every time when you're going to delete something mundane like dirt, nor do you want to accidentally delete an expensive weapon that you're going to use later. For this reason, the developers allow you to set your item deletion preference. Go to Settings, then the Game tab, and then go to Item Deletion and set the level to whatever you're comfortable with. For me, I set this to Rare and above, meaning that if I delete anything that is an uncommon or lower item, the game won't prompt me for confirmation, and if I delete anything that's rare or above, it will. Tip number 3, turn off snapping for finer grained item placement. When you're building things out in the world, you'll notice that sometimes you can't get an item exactly where you want to, and that is because item snap is turned on by default. You want to go down and turn this off, and this will allow you to more easily place an item exactly where you need it, like a wall or a roof. Tip number 4, use the Q key for immediate ranged weapon use. Enshrouded has this really cool thing where whatever ranged weapon you have equipped on your character, it becomes available by pressing the Q key. you don't actually have to manually toggle between weapons using the number keys like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Instead, all you have to do is hold down the Q key and your ranged weapon will immediately become equipped and active. Then when you let off the Q key, you'll automatically go back to the last melee weapon you had equipped. This is really handy for people who want to try to use two different kinds of weapons, and I do recommend that everybody have a melee weapon and a ranged weapon. Even if you're primarily a ranged weapon user, you still want to have a melee weapon in case enemies get too close. Tip number 5, get double jump as soon as possible. Double jump is probably one of the most useful traversal mechanisms in the whole entire game. There are a bunch of places where it becomes really useful for traversal, and the simple fact of the matter is everybody should have it. Don't waste time, get it early, use it often. Tip number 6, build your primary base close to an existing inn with a high comfort rating. We talked about this a little bit before, but I want to stress this because it's so important. It can be hard to build up a base with a high comfort rating by yourself, but some of these existing buildings like inns already have a really high comfort rating. And if you place a flame altar nearby and expand it to encompass that building, you can repair it and add new items to it, boosting the comfort super high. This gives you a lot more time in the well-rested status, which grants you a whole lot more stamina, which is just exactly what you need when you're out adventuring. So before you settle down and decide to build a permanent base somewhere, look around for an existing inn or other building that has a super high comfort level and build there. Tip number 7, keep 2 pickaxes on you at all times. There are plenty of times in Enshrouded where you're going to want to reach some high level place high up on a mesa or on a mountainside. And really the only way to get up there is going to be to use your pickaxe and climb your way up. You're going to want to dig holes and then double jump from one to the next. The game developers feel like they've done this on purpose. There are some places where there are no trails. The only way to get up there is to mine your way up there. But your pickaxes only have a limited amount of durability, and you don't want to get caught having to go all the way back to your base and then come all the way back out with a refreshed pickaxe. So keep 2 on yourself at all time and you'll save yourself a lot of trouble. Tip number 8, keep multiple weapons on you at all times. Just like the deal with the pickaxes, you want to have multiple weapons on you at all times, especially because of weapon durability. You don't want to get caught in a situation where you're in the middle of a dungeon or a keep or a town fighting a whole bunch of enemies and then your weapon breaks. Likewise, it's a good idea to have weapons that do different damage type. Many of the enemies in the game are resistant to certain damage types, and you'll see that as you're hitting them. When that happens, you want to switch to a different weapon type that does a different damage so that it can be effective against them. Tip number 9, be fully rested before adventuring, especially if going into the Shroud and when using the glider. As mentioned before, stamina is a huge component to the game, and it is used when you are gliding. It's for this reason that I also recommend that you grab up every single honeycomb that you can. Anytime you see a bee's nest, loot it. Honeycombs are used to increase your stamina regeneration rate, and you're going to want this anytime you go use the glider, especially in the early game when your glider can't go very far and you don't have a lot of stamina. This will give you better range. But in addition to that, you have a limited amount of time in the Shroud, and you want to make the most of that before you have to get out of it. So to do that, make sure that you have your stamina maxed out. This will give you more capability for running, and it'll give you better capability for combat because you will find enemies in the Shroud. Finally, tip number 10. Anytime you see 3 question marks on the map, it's probably a Shroud Flower, and you want to go after these immediately. And here's the reason why. Every time you kill a Shroud Flower, you're going to earn a skill point. This is one of the fastest ways to earn skill points and help develop your character's combat abilities. Don't be scared about going into the Shroud to get one of these Shroud Flowers, even if it looks like it's in the middle of a really big Shroud region and you might be wondering, how the heck do I get out of here? Here's the most important thing to understand. As soon as you destroy a Shroud Flower, the area immediately surrounding that flower will be cleared of the Shroud. You cannot fast travel when you're in the Shroud, but when you're not in the Shroud, so as soon as you clear one of these Shroud Flowers and the area becomes clear, you can fast travel then. So when you see a Shroud Flower on the map, when you see the 3 question marks, tag it, go kill it, get that skill point, and then teleport away with fast travel. And that's it, folks. That's all the tips that I have for new players to Enshrouded. Get the game, go out and have fun in it. It's early access and it's absolutely wonderful. I'm having a blast. You can play with friends. They're constantly patching it and updating it. They have a huge list of features that they're looking at implementing, suggestions from players. I'm so excited to see what they do with this game. I can't wait. And I will be doing a Let's Play series on it soon, so stay tuned for that. Thank you everyone for watching, and as always, if you dig the video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, consider becoming a member for $4.99 a month. Go to the homepage and hit the join button, and until next time, happy gaming everyone.